Picking up to go review again, your strategic posture for any product must change over time. When thinking about the influence and role of technology, your level of uniqueness is going to be variant. Your access and the ability to control complementary assets needs to be taken into account, and you need to think about how that might change over time. The final factor is to consider the competitive implications of your business model. That is, not only is your value proposition correct for delivering value to your customers, but is it a defendable position within the market or industry in which you compete? Here again, that's we know what a business model is. We reviewed it at length last week, but to review, has three parts. The story. Can you make? Does it make sense? Can you provide a narrative that communicates effectively and describes the product in ways that enrich one's understanding of it? The value proposition. Why does it generate value? And do the numbers indeed make sense? The question then is, what makes a business model effective? The proposition here is quite straightforward, that the business model can be thought of as an intermediary step between the innovation, the product technology itself, how you're choosing to implement that technology, and the customer. To be effective, what happens is you need to be positioned in the market effectively, and power, it matters. You will be caught between suppliers who are trying to extract as much value as they can for their products from you, buyers who are going to want to pay an appropriate amount of money for their goods or service, and a marketplace that will continually put pressure on you to reduce your margins and price. And so, because power matters, you need to think about what it is you do and where you can fit best in the value chain to protect yourself from those pressures. The value chain itself should be familiar from your strategy class. It's a simple proposition describing the transformation of a good or service or product from its raw materials, starting with purchasing through operations, manufacture, distribution, so on, until you finally end up with the product being delivered to the customer. It describes the processes you use to create values and identifies the sets of activities that are most responsible for it. What you're focusing here on is that your business model should focus on that which delivers value. So you will position yourself sort of by definition at some stage of the transformative process. And you need to think about what capabilities or activities you're engaged in. The capabilities that involve sets of activities are more valuable than those that are simple or discrete. Things that are simple or discrete can usually be outsourced. That which is complex and the true source of value demands your focus and should direct your attention to the sets of things that you're uniquely good at, and that will give you some hints as to where you should position yourself in the value chain. The question though is, given your skills, given your resources, given the activities, what determines the amount of power that you have? Here we turn to questions about location. The answer, quite simply, is that you want to locate where you're likely to preserve power and most able to appropriate value from it. Put differently, you must choose to put yourself in a position where you can compete, so win through power, or if you lack that ability, to choose a cooperative strategy which will leave you in a position where you can sustain your advantage over time. In your strategy class, you heard about Porter's five forces. That five force model really is about power. It's about trying to define and help you understand where markets are most rivalrous or not. So here the proposition is power is maximized if you can get the most benefit in your property rights and you can balance the market forces that are against you. The five forces: entry and exit barriers, bargaining powers of buyers, bargaining power of suppliers, threat of substitutes. To the degree that each of those impedes on your ability to operate, it influences the degree of rivalry among firms competing within a marketplace. So, for example, when entry barriers are low, those who are incumbent within an industry always have to be worried about the extent to which new competitors may enter. If a industry has substantial exit barriers, the fact that it will be difficult to cease what you're doing and or to move put your existing assets and skills to a new use makes people reluctant to exit, therefore more willing to fight. Bargaining power determines influences how much you're going to be able to charge for your products, and obviously has a strong influence on the level of rivalry within a marketplace. And role of the threat of substitutes, quite frankly, is to put a cap on the value of the goods or services that you provide. If you charge too much, people are tempted to look at substitutes and will start purchasing substitutes based on the trade-offs between the performance and price of your product relative to that of others. When we think about power, some things to take into account. Uniqueness and control over complementary assets limits rivalry and reduces the threat of entry. Lack of uniqueness or control over complementary assets suggests a need to identify a position where your rivals have incentive not to steal your profits or are motivated not to compete with you. That is to say, if you lack uniqueness and you lack control over complementary assets, you now face a choice about cooperation. And in most cases, cooperation is more indicated. So, the choice about a competitive approach or a cooperative approach depends on the level of rivalry faced and the quality or strength of what we call the appropriability regime. The appropriability regime, going back, let's think about it a little bit. It includes a variety of factors: first mover advantages, quality of legal protections, characteristics of the technology, stage of the life cycle, role of complementary assets, time available to exploit the opportunity, that is, speed, and the ease of establishing valuable complementary relationships. All come into influence your ability to profit from an invention. We read an article by Quack on what are the best strategies. Here the hypothesis is looking at the relationship between intellectual property and complementary assets. The notion here, quite simply, is if you have strong IP and you happen to own or control the complementary assets, you're in a position where you can function as an idea factory. You can license out your ideas. You don't have to develop them. You can prosper just simply by introducing your ideas in the marketplace and profiting from how others use those. If your intellectual property is strong but your assets are weak, your complementary asset position is weak, trying to be a standard setter becomes important. And here we have examples in video games, we have examples in computing technologies and Bluetooth. For example, being the standard setter will establish a platform and therefore bring a host of a neighborhood or a community of competitors to adopt the platform and the standard that you are promoting, and so you benefit from the network effect of that. If your intellectual property is weak, but your complementary assets are strong, then what you then do is you act as in a cooperative way as a cautious suitor. You are soliciting relationships with those who have the ability to exploit your product. You're going to do it in such a way, probably try to not make too much of a fuss. It's a mild and meek strategy, but here basically what you're trying to do is not get too much attention. Now, if your intellectual property is weak and your ability to control complementary assets is weak, you have really very little advantage. and what advantage you have is fleeting. So the notion here is that you enter the market quick and as hard as you can and benefit when you can. One of the examples of this is a introduction of the wine cooler creation of the wine cooler market. And in that particular case, it was invented by a couple of guys in California who basically decided to bottle a beverage called sangria. Sangria was simply a mix of wine and fruit juices, sugars, and was a popular beverage, summertime beverage. But it had not at that time been introduced in bottle form or in can form. What they did was to come up with the idea. They test marketed a variety of products, developed a product line, went out and raised about $20 million from investors, and spent all of their money on advertising. They did so, established a significant market share in Los Angeles, and then turned around and sold all their product line to, I believe it was, I'm trying to remember the wine company that purchased it. I believe it was Seagram's that purchased it, because they knew that because the idea could be readily imitated, the competitive advantage to them was to enter the marketplace, enter it quick, establish a market share that would be valuable to an established competitor, and then exit as quickly as possible. And they did so, and exited, I believe, about 4 months after the introduction of the original California Cooler product itself, and did a terrific job. Another example is Sobe Drinks. Sobe was a private company. They partnered with a beer distributor in Los Angeles in order to get their products into convenience stores and throughout the Los Angeles area. They quickly levered a very modest investment of under $50 million in the Sobe brand uh, over the course of about 18 months, and were eventually acquired by PepsiCo for approximately 400 million or so. Again, a quick exit with a product that would be readily imitated, but they took advantage of the fact that they didn't control either the complementary assets or the intellectual property, but by attacking the market, we're able to create value and therefore prosper. The Another way to think about the appropriation question is to ask yourself and go through an analysis of the make or buy. Make or buy analysis is presented in the Teese article, and here it gives you a tree for decision making. Do you require complementary assets for success? If yes, then you need to ask yourself some more questions. If you don't require them, commercialize immediately. Moving on through questions about the degree of specialization, the appropriability regime, the role of the specialized asset in the manufacture of the process, the availability of cash, and your competitive position. In the end, you end up with a guide to either producing the good yourself or licensing and doing things through market reach. This is a quite effective model. It's actually been tested and proven reliable. And David Teese built quite a career, as a matter of fact, on marketing this model. He is a New Zealander. He works out at Berkeley. David was identified as one of the five most wealthy New Zealanders. I think 2 years ago, I think his market worth is about $400 million at this point in time. Most of all of that generated by taking his consulting profits from this model and investing it in New Zealand real estate. So you can indeed make money as a professor by practicing what you preach, and I'll be doing some more preaching, and thank you for your time today.